What exactly does strategy mean for today's organizations? A strategy is a plan of action that's mid to long term in duration and is designed to help your company achieve its broad mission. So, if your company's mission is to be number one in its market, the strategies you develop should form a plan of action for getting the company to that position. However, the global business landscape isn't static. Rather, it's in a constant state of change. So strategies must reflect the very real possibility that they'll need to be modified in the future. Good strategic plans involve those individuals who are close to the market and deeply involved in the operations of the business. They include a cross-section of stakeholders in the organization, everyone from the customer to the worker on the factory floor. Strategic planners must be able to address long-term and short-term issues that face the organization. A strategy is a plan for achieving a major organizational objective. Objectives are important for a number of reasons. They give everyone a set of guidelines and a focus. They help motivate everyone to achieve. They provide a basis for measuring achievement. Tactics, on the other hand, are the methods for carrying out the strategy. Marketing guru Seth Godin uses a skiing analogy to explain the difference. He says that negotiating turns on a ski slope requires great tactical skill that must be executed perfectly, but choosing the right place to ski is a strategy. He claims that everyone skis better in Utah. Basically, the strategy sets you up so you can perform the tactics flawlessly, all conditions being perfect, which they never are. The boundary between top management and middle management, and who does strategy and who does tactics, is quickly eroding in today's dynamic and complex marketplace. Today, strategy has seeped down into the lowest levels of management in the organization. At the same time, a CEO who doesn't understand tactics can't ensure that strategies are properly executed. Strategic goals generally are developed by top management and focus on broad issues that affect the company overall. Some examples of strategic goals are growth, raising capital, reducing employee turnover, new product development. But more and more, the responsibility for designing and implementing strategic goals is being shared with lower-level management and operations people. In other words, people closest to the market. In a time when global market conditions fluctuate rapidly, it's a very dangerous practice to rely on strategic plans and goals developed solely in the ivory towers of upper management, far removed from the street. For example, product planners often have difficulty forecasting demand so that they can order the correct amount of raw material and schedule production efficiently. Some companies have formed departments of analysts to crank out copious volumes of numbers in an effort to correctly forecast needs, but the only thing you can ever be certain of is that the forecasts will always be off. Consequently, many companies are, for the most part, overstocked with costly inventory. Today, smart companies are approaching this problem not with forecasting tools, but with a strategy focused on more efficient and faster production times. They respond to actual market demand with rapid production. They order raw materials as needed and produce products as needed. So, strategic planning for production is now done on the factory floor rather than in the executive penthouse. Tactical goals generally are developed by middle managers or those directly responsible for executing a strategy. The purpose of tactical goals is to work out ways to make strategies happen. The metaphor most commonly used to describe tactics is that tactics are to the battle what strategy is to the war. Strategy is the big picture, and tactics are the steps taken to achieve the strategy. Where strategy generally is concerned with resources, market environment, and the mission of the company, tactics usually deal more with people and actions. In essence, tactics are about execution. To effectively execute a tactical plan requires that you take the following actions. Look at all the possible alternatives before proceeding. Give all those involved in executing the tactical plan the resources and the level of authority they need to do their part. Make sure that effective modes of communication are in place to minimize conflict or overlap of activities. Continuously monitor progress to ensure that you're on target. Line managers, those who deal directly with the product, typically create operational goals, which are usually very narrow in focus and can be accomplished relatively quickly. Operational goals and plans come in many forms. Don't make the mistake of thinking that strategic planning takes place only inside the organization, preferably behind closed doors, in rooms with plenty of coffee, bagels, charts, spirited banter, and brainstorming. That's only one way that strategic planning takes place, and it may not even be the most important way. A whole host of external environmental factors have a major impact on the planning you do for your business. This section takes a look at three of the most important factors: customers, dynamic markets, and competition. Today, customers are jaded by a selection of products and services that overwhelm them with choices. In some markets, customers no longer rush to buy things on sale because a sale is always going on somewhere. Because customers have so many choices, they're more demanding. Levels of quality that were considered above and beyond only a short time ago are now considered minimum quality standards. You now have to go way beyond those old standards to grab your customers' attention. Remember, brand loyalty is declining, so businesses have to work much harder to keep their customers. Keeping customers is paramount because a customer becomes more valuable over time from repeat purchases and referrals. Therefore, the solution to planning in this new, very complex marketplace lies in building long-term customer relationships built on trust. And you can't gain the trust of your customers if you don't interact with them. Market research has been the foundation of most strategic planning. Unfortunately, traditional market research has formed the basis for most of the market information that companies have used to do their planning. That kind of information typically is too general to be of much use in specific markets. The information you really need for planning purposes comes directly from the customer. A classic case of the failure to listen to the voice of the customer is the introduction of New Coke, the beverage that taught Coca-Cola some important lessons. Coca-Cola, in an effort to break out of the Coke-Pepsi wars, decided to tweak its famous formula. It based the decision on faulty market research, in which they asked consumers if they would buy a product that tastes better than Pepsi but was still a Coke. Consumers, without ever having tasted the product, responded with a resounding yes. However, Coca-Cola failed to ask the most important question: why? The company went ahead and launched the product based on its feedback, and it was a disaster. At the end of 77 days, Coca-Cola reintroduced Classic Coke with great fanfare, telling its customers that it had made a mistake. Fortunately for Coca-Cola, their loyal customers became even more loyal. Customers, however, sometimes don't readily reveal what they really want. Often they give the easiest, most expedient answer to a question, such as, "What do you think of this product?" No one wants to intentionally hurt someone's feelings, Even if it is a big company like Coca-Cola, if you don't spend time out in the market listening to real people, you're taking a big chance that the information being used by your company doesn't reflect the real feelings of the customer. If the info doesn't match up, the strategies you devise won't hit the mark. In the past, a business could create a sustainable competitive advantage relatively easily through such things as a unique market segment, lower costs, product and service differentiation, and superior execution. In today's fast-changing global marketplace, staying ahead of the competition isn't that easy. Superiority in one or more of those areas can certainly get you started, but you won't be able to sustain an advantage with those factors alone. Many businesses now say that you literally have to ignore the competition to gain a competitive advantage. No one wants to spend time designing a strategy that doesn't work or doesn't fit with the overall goals of the company. A well-designed strategic plan can do the following for your company. Provide information across the entire organization that may not otherwise be available. Force management to look at the big picture. Where are we going? Force people to communicate about goals and resources to achieve those goals. Create a sense of common focus and direction toward an agreed-upon goal. Remember, you must turn your planning into behavior. It's all well and good to say that you want your company to increase sales by 50% in the coming year, but exactly how are you going to make that happen? What strategies and tactics will you set? Also, planners too often focus on structural changes and requirements, such as the plant and equipment, and never consider the human side of things, such as evaluation and reward systems and management development. What are you specifically going to do to provide incentives for your employees? You can't see what's coming if your head is buried in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, and many business owners do just that. They become so caught up in the day-to-day activities of their businesses that they never stop to see what's coming down the road. Strategic improvising must be a regular activity of your company, not something you do where there's nothing else to do. We find that business owners rarely have nothing else to do. Regularly scanning the environment for changes that might affect your business will ensure that you have time to prepare to meet those changes. To make sure that your company is keeping its eyes on the business environment, we recommend doing the following. Encourage everyone from management employees to mailroom workers to read trade journals from your industry. You can't stay competitive and meet the needs of your customers if your focus is completely inside the business. You can now find many of these journals on the internet. Attend trade association meetings and business conferences. Here you can network with others in your industry and get the latest information and hear the latest rumors on who's doing what. Make sure that everyone stays close to the customer so that you're always up to date on their changing needs. You can do that by talking to customers on the phone, by bringing them to your company for a visit or tour, or by giving them access to your company via a website. The bottom line is that as you begin to think about strategic planning for your organization, you should think about it in terms of the changing environment in which your company is operating. Don't plan so rigidly that you forget to change your plans before the environment changes and it's too late. Here's a checklist of questions to ask yourself to make sure that you're planning for changes in your organization. 1. What's the overriding mission for our company? 2. What goals do we have to reach to achieve our mission? 3. What's our company doing to encourage everyone to stay current on what's happening in the industry? 4. What are we doing to gather competitive intelligence so that we can find the blue ocean markets? 5. How are our employees at all levels of the organization participating in our strategic planning process? 6. In what ways are we staying close to our customers?